turn my rooster loose. I'm gonna turn my rooster loose. He's gonna strut and crow like you don't know. I'm gonna turn my rooster loose. 'Cause I had to clean my hen house out. I had to clean my hen house out. They were getting hard to catch. All they did was scratch and peck. I had to clean my hen house out. 'Cause them old girls wouldn't lay no more. Them old girls wouldn't lay no more. They'd eat up all my feed. They wouldn't give me what I need. 'Cause them old girls wouldn't lay no more. So I'm gonna turn my rooster loose. I'm gonna turn my rooster loose. He's gonna strut and crow like you don't know. I'm gonna turn my rooster loose. I'll turn him loose. I'm gonna fill my coop back up right. I'm gonna fill my coop back up right. With a brand new flock of chicks. Got a brand new bag of tricks. I'm gonna fill my coop back up right. So if you see my old boy running round, if you see my old boy running round, you better put your own bird up, 'cause he's got a charming strut. If you see my old boy running round, 'cause I'm gonna turn my rooster loose. I'm gonna turn my rooster loose. He's gonna strut and crow like you don't know. I'm gonna turn my rooster loose. I'll turn loose one more time.
Hi, I'm Matt Robin, and I'm here at the Brick House Bar and Grill in Meridian, Mississippi. The good thing about the Brick House is it's one of those rare places that happens to focus more on the taps than it does bottles of beer. Now, on top of that, it chooses to specifically focus on Mississippi craft beer. So let's go ahead and start off by learning a little bit about the great state of Mississippi.
You get 4 or 5 Mississippians together, and 1 or 2 of them are going to be able to pick up a guitar and bang out a tune. It's going to sound pretty good, and I think it's that, as they say, just something in the water.
Well, I mean, the greatest part about running a business and just being in Mississippi is the people.
This is not your great-granddaddy's Mississippi anymore.
Mississippi just has this history of believing that we're last, we're worst, and it's always just going to be that way. And we had to break out of that mold and show people that no, Mississippi has a lot of great things going on. This is a state full of charm, hospitality, and wonderful things, wonderful people, wonderful talent. And we had to get people out of the mindset that we're last and we're worst.
I think Mississippi is the biggest hidden treasure in the entire United States. I grew up in the North. Yes, I'm a damn Yankee at this point. I grew up in Michigan, where that has been essentially a one-state depression for 15 years. So when I came to Mississippi, I thought the economy was fantastic. People spend their money. People actually go out and do things.
There's a certain pace to life, and there's a certain charm to it, I suppose, that makes it very welcoming, very pleasant.
I think one of my favorite things about Mississippi is probably the food and the restaurants and the creativity with the chefs.
Mississippi is often picked on as being one of the heavier states in the country. Part of that is because the food's so good down here. When you grow up and it's common to have, fresh fried catfish and hush puppies and all this just really good food, it's hard not to really enjoy it.
Mississippi food has added about 15 pounds to my waistline.
We're the best, and we're spreading that around the nation, letting people know that.
We're the home of where Elvis couldn't get first place or second place. He took third place in the Jimmy Rogers Talent Competition in the 50s.
The state of Mississippi is fortunate to be blessed with the musical heritage that we have. You think about not only the father of country music with Jimmy Rogers, but also the king of rock and roll with Elvis, and the birthplace of the blues with B.B. King and Robert Johnson and all those guys.
I mean, one of our questions here at this tasting room is, have you ever had craft beer before? And it's amazing to me, and I don't mean this in a degrading way or derogatory way. It's amazing to me how many people say no.
I mean, how many times you hear, I don't like dark beer? And I go, that's amazing, because dark's not a flavor.
You have Wonder Bread and you have handmade fresh bread. They're both bread, they can both make a sandwich, but one sandwich is a lot better.
And if you drink Budweiser, come in and drink Budweiser. Eventually, we're hoping that you get to meet some of our waitresses and meet me and meet great guys like Butch Bailey and Soup Campbell and all these guys and Troy Cole and they'll say, hey, why don't you try Sierra Nevada Pale Ale? Why don't you try this really flavorful lager or whatever you're doing? And that's happening. That's obviously happening because there's people here that they weren't here 4 or 5 years ago. They didn't drink any other beer. And they come here and because of the atmosphere, they feel like they need to expand their horizons and that's what we want.
I think it's more about the attitude of the beer. When Boston Brewery got to be over 2 million barrels a year, they were like, technically they're not craft because now they're in the macro, but they're still making 24 beers a year, different beers. It's that innovative style, that taking a chance on making various beer styles that may not be, economically feasible.
To me, it's about beer being brewed with thought, with thought about the outcome. You know what I mean? About, you want people to like that beer, but there's this art of brewing, still to craft beer.
And you give them a beer like a Southern Pecan or a Jefferson Stout, right? And they go, the first words out of their mouth, well, that's not what I expected at all.
I had conversations with buddies yesterday that we drink beer because we came to the Keg and Barrel. Your staff educated us. We had open minds, and now they drink good beer.
There's not a beer flavor. I mean, take a Berliner Weiss. It tastes like lemonade. Or a Saison, right? I'm not sure exactly what that tastes like, but when you mix in all the bubble gum, right, and the clove and all those other bits and pieces that go in there, right? You go, yeah, I'm not sure how that compares to anything that you would know and understand.
And it's not about getting any more intoxicated, It's about keeping tax dollars in Mississippi and sharing these products with people around here that can taste these profiles and these styles.
When you do the math about breweries, a 5-barrel just seems crazy. They're like, you can't make any money doing 5-barrel. And that may be, but maybe that lends to my passion for beer. My passion takes over where economics fails.
I've had craft beer in a variety of different states. And I came from Michigan, which is widely considered to be one of the top craft beer states in the country, and I do believe that it is. There is some fantastic beer here, but I will hold our local breweries here, our Crooked Letters, our Southern Prohibitions, our Lucky Towns, our Oxford Brewing, our Yallowbusher Brewing, I will hold those, and our Lazy Magnolia, I will hold those breweries against any breweries in the United States with the fabulous flavors, the subtlety, the nuance, and the spark and the verve that they give to beer in this state. They actually can hold up anywhere in the country.
Now, don't get me wrong, the quality of our beer will never be the quality that people who have millions of dollars to invest in laboratory equipment have. But that, to me, is one of the awesome things about craft beer, because every batch is a little different from batch to batch. It's never, you know, that's just the simple truth of craft beer.
There's still a lot of people that don't drink craft beer, and they don't think that they like craft beer. They don't think that there's a beer out there for them, and that's something that we're really trying to work on, and personally, I think teaching bartenders and waitresses about craft beer really helps the industry, because they're the people that are out there pushing it every second of every day.
We absolutely need to, I know the political term is locavore, but we need to support our local economy. That is what makes communities become more established. That is what will rebuild as a nation what makes us great. And one way we can do that, and it's just a small way, is craft beer. Craft beer creates jobs in every community in the state that has a brewery. It creates jobs among the distributors, and it creates jobs among the local on-premise accounts that actually serve beer, the restaurants, the bars. It creates jobs. And so the more that we are able to create local jobs and enjoy our local flavors, the more we have to attract tourists, to engage in tourism dollars, to be able to get people to come to our community, because we now have a reason to come. Craft beer gives us an additional reason to come.
We got together, and we all saw a common problem with Mississippi, and that being a lack of good selection of beer on the shelves. We had some good beer, but if you're a craft beer lover, you want to try what's new. You want to try what you've never had before.
When I moved to Hattiesburg in 2002, fancy beer was Amberbach or Michelob. You know, maybe you could find Red Hook ESB. You know, that was really fancy stuff.
I mean, before they changed it, we couldn't make an IPA.
We couldn't make a Saison.
The number one style
we
in the
couldn't
United
make
States,
Belgians,
right?
we couldn't make real stouts. Yeah, we couldn't make much of anything.
We come together, we all recognize that it's because of the law, and we said nobody's doing anything about it. Let's try to change it. Let's try to, make a change for Mississippi and get this law changed.
In other states, and it was really, when I was paying attention, it was Georgia and Ohio had done these law changes, and they formed these citizen groups where they had affected change in a few key areas, and they had this craft beer boom. And they saw local people investing in their communities, creating breweries, making these really exciting products, and they were available to everybody, and it was really cool to see. So we had another big formal meeting, and we sat down and said, if we're committed to this, if we're going to do this, if we're going to make this change that we believe will benefit Mississippi as a whole, then we got to be committed to it. And that's when we formed Raise Your Pints. And we decided our two key goals would be raising the allowable alcohol content in beer and making home brewing legal. And now the home brewing is an interesting thing. It's something that everyday regular Joe people, they like to brew, no big deal. But the key there for an economic development standpoint is that's where your future brewers come from. That's where your entrepreneurs come from. Imagine someone opening a bakery or a cake shop or something like that who wasn't able to make cakes in their own home kitchen, right? I mean, you've got to kind of start there, and then some people, it just sinks in. It's like, this is what I want to do. I want to make food for people.
And but it was 5 by weight for Mississippi, which equals 6.25 by volume, which was very low. Raising alcohol content in beer, that first thought, if you're not familiar with what it actually is, that scares some people. You're gonna make stronger beer, you're gonna get people drunk quicker. Well, it's not really what it's all about. If you can't buy a cucumber beer in Mississippi, guess what? You can make one. Well, expanding and broadening the laws that affect the brewers, the manufacturing side of the brewing industry for Mississippi, that helps them creative-wise. They lift that cap, it gives them a little more breathing room. We literally thought we're constituents. We can just walk in, say, let's get this done. You know, here's a problem, here's a solution. Can we make this happen? We thought that that's how we could do it. And we learned that's not how it works.
We assumed that the people who would be opposed to what we're doing would be prohibitionists, would be people who are opposed to alcohol. We just said that's obviously who's going to be opposed to this. That wasn't the case at all. And when we got the law passed, it was really interesting that this was voted on by the state house, the state senate, the governor signed it, and we're all sitting around waiting for this big, oh my gosh, I can't believe you're pro-alcohol. Nothing. No, there was one letter to the editor, one in the Clarion Ledger, where somebody wrote in and said, you know, this shouldn't have been happening because next year they're going to be dancing or something, I don't know. But nobody got really upset. So the take-home point from that is, and as somebody who grew up in the 70s and 80s in Mississippi, this is very heartening. This is not your great-granddaddy's Mississippi anymore. Mississippi elected officials can vote for and support good, pro-business, pro-liberty bills that happen to be alcohol-related and not see this big backlash from certain constituents back home. And that was, if anything, that might be the most important thing to take away from all this.
So we formed what became Raise Your Pints, and we incorporated, we filed with Secretary of State, set up a bank account, started scouting and interviewing lobbyists, and then we started what became our fundraising goal. We tried to raise money, started selling memberships, and telling people, here's what we were working on. We'll give you a T-shirt, and we'll put you on our email list, and here's why you should support us, and here's the goal that we're working on. It was a pretty easy sell. So we started forming that, and we had zero experience. We knew nothing about the Capitol, nothing about the legislative process, which is, I guess, kind of why it took us maybe so long to get things done. We were learning as we go.
So let's imagine that you don't like craft beer. Hell, let's imagine that you don't like beer at all. Either way, you have to acknowledge and commend what 4 people with no legislative experience did for the state of Mississippi. Raise Your Pints went to the Capitol and lobbied successfully to change beer laws in the state.
You change this ABW count, we're going to get more breweries in the state. It's going to be more jobs, it's going to be tourism, economic development, it's going to help. And once we changed our message, and they really got excited, and that's kind of what was cool to hear over the years as we were up there. And originally they were just like, hey, nice to meet you, nice to meet you. But as we went along, they would see us up there, and then they would actually want to talk to us and want to hear what we were saying, which was a great thing.
It took us 3 years to get that first law passed. And that sounds like a long time, maybe to some people. If you look in Mississippi, that's the average, actually. For bills that become law, on average, it takes 3 legislative sessions for a bill that's first introduced to become law. So we hit par. We're happy with that. The next year, we went after home brewing hard. We were going after home brewing the whole way anyway. Weren't able to get it. The next year after that, our 4th year of operation, we got home brewing legalized.
The 10 by volume really was a good medium. It would get us, it kind of gets an overlap of every style of beer. So we know we can get an imperial style, we can get Belgian beers. So that was a good, we were content with that.
We made a lot of mistakes. Here's what I know for sure. We were right on the issue, we were on the right side of history, and no matter how perfectly we had played this game, there's no chance that that law gets passed any sooner than the year it got passed.
Since July 1st of 2012, I can't describe it. I mean, this place has changed drastically, dramatically. My sales are up more than we do more business now than I ever thought we could do.
Now we're working real closely with the breweries that have popped up and formed here in the last few years. Now they have formed what is the Mississippi Brewers Guild, and so we're working very closely with that group and kind of letting them take the charge, because laws that affect the brewing industry, the manufacturing side of the brewing industry, it really affect them versus we're just a consumer group.
We formed a Brewers Guild so that we can work together cohesively, because a unified voice coming from all 8 or 9 or 10 now of us is much more powerful than each one of us individually trying to get a message out, whether that's a political message or a marketing message or just an educational message about craft beer. It's much more powerful. And we all have our different focuses, our different strategies, but at the end of the day, we want craft beer in Mississippi to grow, and we know that we can do that better as a group.
This past session was the first time that we went after something that an entire segment of the beer industry was opposed to.
Some of these breweries that kind of off the beaten path in Mississippi, you know, they may not be right next to a convenience store or a grocery store that might sell their beer. So you got these tourists, and brewery tourism is a huge thing. Every time I go out of state, no matter whether it be for business or pleasure, I'm looking for breweries that I can go to and pop in and visit their tap room and, you know, try their beers. But some want to be able to take some of this beer that they sample at the brewery with them. But if a grocery store or a convenience store is not convenient to them, they just get on the road and they hightail it out, so they've lost out on the opportunity to take a little Mississippi beer with them and share with their friends. So, you know, that's kind of something that we'd like to see the breweries be able to do. You know, the fact that so many people are employed by tap rooms, you know, and Mississippi is missing out on that.
This has already happened in a great number of states, and it's been good for those states, unequivocally. States that have allowed a limited number of or limited amount, they define it different ways, of retail sales from the brewery. This has been good for the craft beer industry. It's been good for the beer industry as a whole, and it's been excellent for the craft beer consumers and the citizens of those states.
We realize there's still a lot that can be done in the state.
Again, when Raise Your Pints first started, we had one brewery in the state of Mississippi, Lazy Magnolia. And I used to tell people everywhere I went that it's a shame that the great state of Mississippi only has one brewery. But if you're only going to have one, that's a hell of a brewery to have.
It's good, smooth, it's really good. It's a good drinking beer.
It's for Lazy Magnolia Jefferson Stout. Yeah, I think it's better than, you know, like Guinness. I think it has more complex flavors, so I really like it.
I believe it's the Lazy Magnolia Brewery that's down in South Mississippi. They have one brand that's Indian Summer. It's a really good beer.
The way we got started, Leslie basically came home from work one day and said, I want to get in the beer business. And I was like, are you nuts?
Yes.
And she basically said, I'm not sure how that's relevant. Everybody's like, oh, well, of course it's illegal. And my first words to her were, you know that's illegal, right? She goes, you know, the law, you'd have to prove to me that the law says that it can't be done.
We just believe that there's certain order and logic to the world, so if it's legal to purchase and consume beer in Mississippi, it had to be legal to produce beer in Mississippi, because what lawmaker would forego that tax revenue? So it had to be legal. We knew that it had to be. We just had to find that in the code.
And this other interesting thing about entrepreneurship, right, is that, you know, when you go down the entrepreneurship path, right, you get told no a million times, right? One of the very important lessons in that is you only need one yes. So the path ended up being is that I'd call an attorney, right? And I said, you know, can we brew beer in Mississippi? And he goes, no, it's illegal. I'm like, okay, well, I mean, how do you know? And he goes, everybody knows. I was like, well, could you do a little research and help me out? Just show me, look, I'm not taking your money. How many breweries are in Mississippi? And I was like, 0. He goes, don't you think that's a pretty good hint? Finally made it up to the head of the ABC, Alcohol Beverage Control in the state of Mississippi, and I said, hey, look, I'd like to brew beer in Mississippi. Because by that point, I'd read the Mississippi Code, and I couldn't find where it said that brewing was illegal, but I was like, you know. And he goes, oh, no, brewing's illegal. That's 6 months in jail, $25,000 fine. And I'm like, whoa. At the end of that conversation, he said, but the issue here is that I don't actually regulate beer. See, in the state of Mississippi, beer is not an alcoholic beverage. So it doesn't come under the Alcohol Beverage Control Board, it's actually beer. And so there's this whole other section of the code that's relegated to beer. And he said, you need to talk to Ronnie Lynch, the Mississippi State Tax Commission. He's the guy who regulates beer. So I called Ronnie up. And this is 6 months of reading and talking to people and being told no 1,000 times. And I said, Ronnie, can I brew beer in Mississippi? He said, sure. I'm like, what? He goes, yeah, no problem. You can brew beer in Mississippi. Or what do I need to do? He goes, you fill out a piece of paperwork, right? You send me a check for $1,000. You show me your federal brewer's permit, you're done.
And there was really a lot to be said about saying, hey, we're Mississippi's first packaging brewery since Prohibition. I mean, you can't get much better marketing than that. That's a big attention grab right there.
Historically, Lazy Magnolia, the oldest brewery in the state of Mississippi, right, had one hole.
We had 6 inches of footage in the whole store. 6 inches.
One case of beer.
For 9 years.
So Steve D'Angelo ran a restaurant in downtown Bay St. Louis called Bay City Grill. And Bay City Grill was this great gastropub of a restaurant, right? Was it Wednesday or Thursday night?
I think it was a Thursday night.
I think it was a Thursday night as well, right? It was the very first time, right? It'd come out in the newspaper. We made the front page of the Sun Herald, and FEB, our distributor here on the coast, delivered that beer, right? And for the very first time, Southern Pecan was on tap, and Blue Heron. Those were the 2 beers that made it. Blue Heron and Southern Pecan was on tap in downtown Bay St. Louis, in a little bitty restaurant, and it was just like, and we had, all of our friends showed up, and the media was out, and they brought a lot of people, and there's like 200 people there drinking beer. So the first beer ever commercially made in Mississippi for sale at a restaurant. Walmart now has an entire end cap.
An island of beer.
Right?
A subcontinent.
And it's all of the craft beers from Mississippi. Anybody who's got a craft beer in Mississippi that is in a package, it's sitting on that shelf, right?
And not just
one hole.
We have 8 holes in all of our packages facing every different direction, and even the cold box.
And you have bars now. The Whole Foods that opened up in Jackson said, hey, look, we're going to have a growler station, and it's going to only be Mississippi beer. When we got started, there was one bar in Mississippi that had more than 10 taps. One in the entire state.
Yeah.
And now, I mean, almost every town has, a tap room, right? That'll have 20 or 30 or 40 taps, right? And that was unheard of back then. Are we climbing Mount Everest? Yes. Are we going to get to the top? Yes. Are we going to stand around and look around? No.
Southern Prohibition grew out of the keg and barrel. It was my concept. We had a 1-barrel brew house for 4 or 5 years. Had some friends helping me brew. A buddy of mine approached me a year and a half ago, Quinby Chun, who owns Southern Prohibition. And my goal for Southern Prohibition was always to leave the walls of the keg and barrel. We had some issues this year. We're trying to change some laws. We didn't realize that as a holding a beer permit, I cannot have a manufacturing license too. Having Southern Prohibition leave these walls and knocking out just ridiculously great beer, those are big moments for me.
Well, I don't want to separate us completely from other Mississippi breweries because we're all in this together to grow the brand, but we are the only brewery in Mississippi that is canning our beer right now. I think a few of the breweries have plans to be canning later, but that's definitely something that sets us apart, using the cans to be accessible. Our artwork's really different, and our beers are different than a lot of the breweries. We're a very hop-forward brewery, if you can tell drinking our beer. We love the hops, and Ben and Quimby really love experimenting with hops. The Susie Bee and the Devil's Harvest and the Fire Ant cans are artwork from a friend of Quimby Chun's. I believe they met in high school or college. His name is Daniel Hayes, and he did those for us. And we now have a girl named Whitney Miracle come in. She designed this can right here, and she's going to be working with another artist to get some drawings done and do some future cans. The Cicada series cans, this is just like a single can. I guess this concept's kind of new for people, but it's kind of every bottle that a brewery has is pretty much the same. It's the same bottle and they put a different label on it. So this is the same and we're gonna put a different sticker on it. So this opens us up to doing one-offs, so to all these seasonals and getting them in cans and getting them out into stores in different ways. We're going to expand our markets a little further. We just dove into New Orleans and the Metairie area, so we're really gonna be put it out there and then expand throughout Louisiana, and hopefully we will be up in Tennessee before the year's over and finish out the state of Mississippi. And Mississippi's a growing and great place. I'd rather be a part of a culture that I look back in 20 years and like I helped grow that and start that and make that something special. I definitely want there to be that day whenever you come to Hattiesburg, you know that you're supposed to be drinking Southern Prohibition.
That's what was cool about the brewing scene, was that we realized here we are in our 30s or late 20s, I guess, when we really first started, discovering that there's this whole DIY or underground scene, brewing, because at the time it was illegal. So we'd go to homebrew meetings and no one would say the address of where the meeting was. We just knew that it was in a neighborhood, possibly on a certain street, and there would be a torch lit in front of the house. So I mean, no one had ever gotten arrested, but we didn't want to be the first. Wanda and I have 3 kids, and we don't want them to have parents in jail. So we were discreet, for a while, especially when we started planning the commercial brewery. Crooked Letter, we actually backed away from home brewing for a while, or that is, from the scene, you know what I mean? I guess it's confession time. It's not about showing favoritism or anything. There's just so many great breweries, and we took a lot of inspiration. We did, yeah, from recipe formulation down to how we, how we think we should be sort of viewed. We were brewing and literally planning the brewery, pen to paper, so to speak, in 2009. So at that point in time, since we weren't a commercial brewery yet, we didn't have privy information. We didn't, really know anything about upcoming legislation. So we were actually working on all 4 of these recipes at the 6% alcohol volume level. To me, it's special to stay here because we're, again, kind of going back to the music and all that. It's important to me to help build a scene or a culture. You know what I mean? And it's something that we've always done, is to bring something to people, I remember opening up that first message after we did some releases and, of our beer initially, when we were first permitted and put the beer on the market, and then Top of the Hops. And when some of the first messages came onto Facebook, I remember being so afraid to open that message, thinking, holy shit, what is it about? You know what I mean? Like, what was wrong with the beer or whatever? And I still remember the first email coming in about just how great the beer was. I mean, I don't know exactly what it was, what it said, but I remember that emotion, and that was a very proud moment to get a message from someone. I had no clue who it was, just some person on the street drinking a beer that we made and appreciating it so much that they emailed us. I mean, that was cool.
Yeah, Mr. Romp, our mocha porter, that actually kind of blew us away, because that was my recipe that I made at home for myself. And I am a coffee and chocolate addict. If there's chocolate, I'll eat chocolate. I won't eat food, I'll eat chocolate and I'll have coffee. There will be no food involved, such as chocolate and coffee. So of course it had to go in the beer. So every time we would do it, we would experiment with the type of coffees we would use, how we would add the coffee, types of chocolates. I mean, it took a long time to, and it was always a good beer, but it was always just something that we worked on. It was me and Paul's little thing that we just kind of bonded, sitting on the back porch, brewing just brewing by ourselves.
The porter was that thing. We worked on porters for over 6 years straight. When it was Wanda and I on the deck brewing, it was that porter, and we were doing something with that porter. We've done anything you could imagine with that porter. We just haven't put any of them out, except
We actually weren't going to make that when we opened. We were thinking, I don't know, it might be a little bit
overwhelming. Yeah. They emailed me saying, "Man, it's crazy. You talk about other breweries too," and that's just what we do. It's not just about Crooked Letter in Mississippi right now. We're just like thrilled to be part of this whole thing that's going on, and to us, it's important to, like I say, help with that that process, or that. Now I'm getting nerdy. It's not, it's just it's very, very special to be here right now.
Keg and Barrel down in Hattiesburg decided to have a homebrew competition, aptly named the Outlaw since it was still illegal at the time. And Brandon, our other partner, decided we should join this. We should get in on this because we've been brewing for a little while together. We came up with the first beer. We went down there and won the whole thing. But about a month later, Chip called me. We'd known each other since college, had done business together, and he was looking into getting something different. Wanted to know if I was interested in going pro with this, and I said absolutely. I needed somebody to run that other side of the business, so we took off from there. It's even when we were just trying to get started, we could pick up the phone and call. Mark and Leslie Henderson down at Lazy Magnolia have been a huge help to us. They're an open book. We're good friends with all the ones that have started up, with the ones that are in planning. We try to help each other out because it's not us against them. It's us against everybody else trying to get into the state and take some of that market share, right? So, we try to help out the new ones. We get help from the guys that have been there longer than us. It's a great relationship. We started with the Flare incident. It was our first one to win a competition with, so we knew we were going to do that from the get-go. But it is a very dark stout. It is an oatmeal stout, so it's creamy. It's brewed with Vermont maple syrup and brown sugar, so it's a little easier to drink than a lot of oatmeal stouts. But we knew that we couldn't just have a stout out there. People are scared of darker beers a lot of times, so we started looking at other options. We wanted to put a blonde out. There's a lot of them out there, American blondes. There's some good ones, there's some bad ones, but there's not a whole lot of variation in the style. So at the time, we wanted to have that, but different. So we looked at a Belgian-style blonde. There wasn't a whole lot of Belgian beers at all in the state at that point, so it was something different. It's a good way to get the Belgian flavor profile without spending $12 on a bomber of beer, or $8 or $9 at the tap. It's done really well. It's our #1 seller. A lot of people love that beer. And then we have our pub ale. It's just a simple English mild. It's a style that has all but gotten forgotten in the U.S. over the last 10 years. I think it's going to make a comeback because it's something that England did for years. Every little brew pub had a English mild of some sort. There's a lot of variation in the style, but it's easy drinking. Have 5 or 6 without getting tore up. It's a good, it's a good all-around beer.
It was a session beer before there was a such thing as session beer.
But we have to deal with all these big breweries coming into the States. They have much higher revenue streams than we do because they can sell on site. They have almost 1.5 to 2 times the revenue per barrel of output that any Mississippi brewery can really accomplish because we can't sell on site, we can't have tap rooms, But we can overcome that. We can be the local thing. Mississippians are very proud of what's theirs, and we hope to be a part of that. People will take us on as their beer. So when laws do change, because they will eventually, we'll reap the benefits then. I think a lot of people still view Mississippi in the same old light, southern state, bunch of racists, they're backwoods, no education. And that changes little by little. People that show up. One of our partners over here is from Wisconsin. Lord knows what she thought of us before she got down here, but she liked it so much she stayed. So, it's one of those that we can't overcome people that'll never show up here. We damn sure should change the minds of people that do.
Well, the greatest part about running a business and just being in Mississippi is the people. I mean, I know that sounds cliche, but anytime we need help, you know, we're not afraid to ask, and people aren't afraid to lend a hand. I mean, just like today, we had roughly, you know, over a dozen people volunteer their time just to help us clean up the brewery. You know, there was no incentive other than, hey, come out and help out a local business. That, and you know, another thing we needed this week was to get our gas turned on, and that was, you know, going to take way longer than what we needed. So I just posted on Facebook, we need some help getting gas turned on. Within an hour, we had gas turned on. So, you know, what I like about it, and I think we all do, is just the people of Mississippi, they want to support local, and we're glad to be here.
I mean, we're going to add 2 to 3 new beers this year to our current lineup. We'll continue on for that. We plan on doing a lot of small batch stuff, seasonal stuff. It's what we love doing. So we're just, now that we have our own physical plant where we don't have to wait for our turn to brew something, we can get a lot more done.
So if I've learned anything from making this movie, it's that movies are really hard to make. And also, you should buy local. I mean, you can't really complain about Mississippi if all the money you're spending is going outside of the state. So remember to shop, buy, eat, and most importantly, drink local.
I'll tell you what drives me when it comes to raise your pints or social interactions on an everyday level or anything else. I was born and raised in Mississippi, Rankin County, Mississippi, and Pearl, Mississippi, to be exact. And every place on this earth has problems. And every problem of every place on this earth are a result of people. And the solutions to those problems are also going to be found in people. And if Mississippi has one issue that we really need to work on, it's good people leaving Mississippi. It's people who decide that I don't want to deal with whatever it is, whether it's the political climate or the economic climate or the social climate. They leave and go somewhere else, somewhere they're more comfortable. I decided that with my family, I wasn't going to do that. I wasn't going to be a guy who left Mississippi and went somewhere else to be more comfortable. I want to be a guy when I'm 80, 90 years old and I'm sitting on my rocking chair on the porch, even if it's just a tiny little thing, I want to be able to point to something and say, that's something I helped make happen. I made the place I live a better place. Even if it's in the tiniest little insignificant thing like beer, okay? Look, I know that I can't feed starving kids in Africa. I can't fix the economic crisis. But what I can do is I can, in this one little bitty way, I can make Mississippi a better place to live and do business. And what I would not do is leave because I want to go somewhere more comfortable. And Mississippi needs good people. We need creative people, and we need intelligent people. We need people who care, people who are empathetic to stay here and to make the place we live a better place.
If that means anything at all. Shut the door, let's keep this quiet. Shut the door, let's keep this quiet. Shut the door, let's keep this quiet. Tonight is our last chance. Shut the door, let's keep this quiet. Shut the door, let's keep this quiet. Shut the door, let's keep this quiet. Tonight is our last chance. And oh, tonight we'll see what I can make of me. Not much of anything, and oh, well, I'd like to see just what you think of me. If that means anything, and oh, please don't worry what might become of me. I can't promise anything, and oh, well, I'm somewhere in between who I am and the better part of me. You've got the better part of me. Yeah, yeah, the better